Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
Today, we're going all the way back to the beginning.
Literally.
Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
the serpent,
That apple,
the apple.
which may or may not have been an apple.
That's right.
Right. We don't know.
We're not really sure.
But it's one of those stories
Yeah,
that has really captivated people for centuries.
absolutely. It's foundational.
Oh,
And I think it's interesting because it's not just a religious text.
right.
It's also woven into just sort of Western culture in general.
Right.
You know, the questions about, human nature,
Yeah.
temptation.
The consequences of choice.
Yeah,
And I think what I find so interesting is how it still resonates with us today.
absolutely.
Even though we might not have a literal Garden of Eden,
Right. Yeah.
we all face temptation.
We all make choices.
We deal with the fallout. And I think one of the things that Genesis 3 does so well is portraying this idea of temptation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the serpent doesn't just offer Eve an apple
No.
or a piece of fruit, whatever it was.
Right.
He offers her knowledge,
Yeah.
power, the chance to be like God.
Well, let's break down this serpent strategy.
Okay.
Because it's clever.
It is.
It's not just, hey, you want this.
Right.
He starts by planting a seed of doubt,
Yes.
doesn't outright contradict God, but twists it just enough.
Right.
He says, did God really say,
Uh-huh.
you can't eat from any tree?
It's brilliant
Right.
because he's introducing just enough ambiguity
Right.
to make Eve question what she thought she knew.
Yeah. And that's a tactic I think we see all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Even today.
All the time.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Advertising, political rhetoric,
I mean, think about just in our daily conversations.
Right.
How often are we, hearing things
Yeah. Right.
that are designed to kind of influence
Yeah.
our perceptions and our choices,
Yeah.
twist things a little bit
Yeah.
to make us see things a certain way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then he delivers the real hook.
Yeah.
You will be like God,
Yeah.
knowing good from evil.
That's it.
So he's tapping into this deep human desire
Right.
for knowledge,
Yes.
power, transcendence.
It's a promise
right.
that speaks to our ambition,
Yeah.
our curiosity,
Yeah.
this yearning we have for something more.
Yeah.
And I think it's so seductive because it plays on our kind of innate desire to grow
Yeah.
and to understand the world around us.
And the text really emphasizes how tempting this fruit is.
Yes, it does.
It's described as, good for eating, pleasing to the eye,
Right.
and desirable for gaining wisdom.
And I think the thing, too, is it's not just intellectual curiosity.
Right.
It's this visceral, emotional desire.
Right.
This fruit represents something that promises to satisfy us on multiple levels.
And Eve, being human, succumbs.
Yeah,
But it's important to remember Adam's right there.
he is.
And he eats it too.
Absolutely. It's a
Shared act
shared responsibility.
with consequences that are going to impact them both.
Right.
Big time.
For sure.
Okay. And the consequences are pretty immediate.
Oh, yeah. Like one minute they're just hanging out in the garden.
Right.
And the next they're hiding. They're
Yeah.
covering themselves up with fig leaves.
Yeah.
Feeling this shame and vulnerability for the first time.
It's like they suddenly see themselves
Yeah,
and the world around them completely different.
totally.
That image of them sewing the fig leaves together
Yeah.
always just struck me as so poignant. Like
Yeah.
this representation of their new awareness.
Absolutely. They're trying to hide.
Right.
They're trying to cover up
Yeah.
this sort of, I don't know, perceived flaw or...
Yeah. And it's interesting. Then God enters the scene.
Right.
And he says, where are you?
Yeah. Which is interesting because,
He knows.
God knows where they are.
Right.
So it's not really a question of location.
Right.
It's a question of accountability.
Yeah. It's like when a parent asks a kid, did you break this?
Exactly.
Even though they know.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm giving you a chance to be honest here.
Right. Be honest. Take responsibility.
But instead of confessing,
Yeah.
Adam and Eve do what?
Well, they deflect.
Right. Yeah.
Adam blames Eve.
Uh-huh.
Eve blames the serpent.
Classic blame game.
Such a human thing to do, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
When we make a mistake.
Yeah.
It's like our first instinct is to protect ourselves.
Right.
Try to shift the blame.
Yeah.
Avoid those consequences.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that just kind of leads to further separation,
Right.
not just from others,
Right.
but from ourselves as well.
So God, having given them a chance, delivers his judgment.
He does.
And each character
Yeah.
gets a very specific consequence.
Right.
So let's start with the serpent.
Okay.
Who gets perhaps the most striking punishment?
I mean, this creature that was described as cunning and astute,
Right.
now cursed to crawl on its belly
Yeah.
and eat dust. I mean, talk about humiliation.
Like a total...
Stripped of his power,
Yeah.
dignity.
It's interesting because it really kind of highlights this idea that even the most clever manipulations, the most seductive lies,
Yeah.
lead to downfall.
Ultimately, yeah.
Like there's this sense of poetic justice
Yeah.
to the serpent's fate.
Absolutely.
And it also speaks to the idea that deceit
Yeah.
and manipulation, they might offer temporary gains,
Right.
but ultimately...
Lead to diminished existence.
Right.
Right. Like the serpent, in its quest for power,
Yeah.
ends up degraded.
Eve's punishment focuses on
Yeah.
pain of childbirth. Yeah.
And her relationship with her husband.
So, increased pain in childbirth.
Right.
And then her desire will be for her husband,
Uh-huh.
and he will rule over her.
And this has been interpreted in so many different ways
Oh, I know, right?
throughout history.
Yeah.
Some see it as reinforcing traditional gender roles.
Right.
Others view it as a consequence
Yeah.
of the fractured relationship between men and women.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough passage.
Right.
It's a complex passage.
For sure.
Continues to spark debate.
Adam's punishment centers on his relationship with the earth.
Okay.
Cursed to toil.
Yeah.
Struggle.
Struggle to cultivate the land.
Which will now produce thorns and thistles.
Yeah.
So, like, now it's going to be hard.
Yeah. It really speaks to this idea of this broken harmony
Right.
between humanity and nature.
Oh,
Like,
well.
the garden was abundant,
Yeah.
and now it's a place of resistance.
Yeah.
Work is hard.
Right.
Sustenance is hard. So one of the key concepts that arises from this
Yeah.
is this idea of original sin.
Okay.
So essentially that Adam's sin
Uh-huh.
is somehow passed down to all humanity.
Right. That we're all born into this state of separation
Right.
from God.
This concept has been so influential
Oh,
in
absolutely.
shaping, Western thought,
Yeah.
religious beliefs.
For sure.
I mean, this idea that we are all inherently flawed has
Right.
been a source of both comfort and controversy.
Right. Because on the one hand, you have this idea that, okay, we're all messed up.
Right.
So I don't have to feel bad about my own imperfections.
Right.
But then it also raises all these questions, about...
Right. Free will, justice.
Yeah.
The nature of divine forgiveness.
Big questions.
And we have these verses
Right.
provided from Romans and 2 Corinthians
Okay.
that really underscore this concept.
They do.
So Romans 5.1
Okay.
states, "Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin,
Yeah.
and in this way death came to all people because all sinned."
Heavy stuff.
So it's connecting the consequences
Yeah.
of Adam's actions
Right.
to the entirety of humankind.
Right. That's how sin and death entered the world.
2 Corinthians 11.3
Okay.
uses Eve's temptation as a cautionary tale,
Okay.
warning us
About...
spiritual deception.
Oh.
Right? It suggests we're all susceptible to temptation.
Right.
That we can all be misled by our desires.
Right. We can all fall prey to that cunning manipulation.
It's a sobering reminder
It is.
that despite our best intentions,
Yeah.
we are all capable of making choices that lead us away from
Yeah.
what's good and true.
Right. We can all mess up.
But amidst this bleak picture,
Yeah.
there's also a glimmer of hope.
Oh, okay, there is.
You're referring to the mention of the seed of the woman
Oh, yeah.
who will crush the serpent's head.
Right.
This kind of cryptic prophecy, introduced in Genesis 3.15,
Okay.
that hints at a future redeemer,
Okay.
someone who will ultimately triumph over evil,
Okay.
restore balance to the world.
I like it.
And this has been the subject of much interpretation,
Of course, yeah.
especially within Christian theology,
Yeah.
where it's often seen as foreshadowing Jesus Christ.
Right.
Right. And Galatians 3.1 says,
Ah.
this connection between the seed of the woman and Jesus
Yeah.
is made more explicitly.
Okay.
It's presented as a fulfillment of the promise,
Okay.
a sign that even in the midst of our brokenness,
Yeah.
there's a path toward healing and reconciliation.
I like it.
But even outside of a strictly Christian interpretation,
Yeah.
this idea of a future redeemer
Yeah.
Someone who will rise above the limitations, the flaws of humanity, is powerful.
It is a powerful idea.
Enduring theme in literature.
Mythology.
Yeah.
I mean, even popular culture.
Right.
Like, it speaks to our longing for hope.
Right.
For restoration of what's been lost.
But before we get to any potential redemption, there's the immediate consequence of Adam and Eve's actions.
Which is
expulsion from the Garden of Eden.
They get kicked out.
They are banished from paradise.
Yeah.
Forever barred from returning to that state of innocence and bliss.
Right. And the imagery is so vivid.
Oh, it is.
Cherubim.
Yeah.
Angelic beings.
Yeah.
Guarding the way back to the tree of life.
Right.
With flaming swords. I mean, come on. That's intense.
It's a powerful symbol.
It is.
Of the separation between humanity and God.
Yeah.
A stark visual representation of what's been lost.
Yeah. It paints a pretty bleak picture.
It does.
I mean, they sought knowledge.
Right.
But it came at a price.
A steep price.
They're cast out into a world of hardship.
Toil struggle.
Yeah. So it's like knowledge, it's powerful, but
it's not inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's how we use it.
Right. And the choices we make.
That determine the outcome.
Right. In this case, the knowledge of good and evil brought with it this awareness of their vulnerability.
Right.
Their capacity for wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately, their separation from God.
Yeah. So what does all this mean for us today?
Good question.
I mean, we don't have
the literal garden.
Right. A literal Garden of Eden.
Right.
But we all face temptation.
We do.
We make choices that have consequences.
All the time.
And I think we all kind of long for that.
For what?
That lost innocence.
Oh, yeah.
That whole...
I think that's the power of the story.
Right.
I mean, it transcends time and place.
Yeah.
Because it speaks to these universal human experiences.
Right. We might not be tempted by a literal piece of fruit.
Right. But we're constantly bombarded with temptations.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The allure of instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
The desire for power and status.
Right.
The temptation to compromise our values.
Mm-hmm. For personal gain.
It makes you wonder what our gardens are.
That's a good question.
What are the things that we risk losing through our choices?
Our own little Edens.
Yeah, and what are those flaming swords that stand between us and those places?
Boy, they guard
reminding us of the consequences.
Oh, those are some things to think about.
They are.
Yeah, Genesis 3 doesn't offer easy answers.
No.
It doesn't.
But it does challenge us to think.
To examine our motivations.
Yeah, to be mindful of our choices.
Of the consequences. And for the world around us.
That's right.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for today.
I think so.
We explored the story of Adam and Eve.
We did.
The complexities of temptation and choice.
Yeah.
And this ancient narrative.
How it still resonates with us today.
It does.
I mean, the serpent's strategy.
The consequences.
Original sin.
A redemption.
As always, the deep dive doesn't end here.
That's right. Keep exploring these themes.
Yeah.
Grapple with the questions.
For sure.
Think about what it means for your own life.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep questioning.
Keep exploring.
And keep diving deep.